One quiet morning, a single dad stood up for a stranger and unknowingly opened the door to the family he thought he'd lost forever. Tell me in the comments if you believe in fate, and hit subscribe so you'll never miss these heartwarming journeys. Ethan Cole hadn't planned on being anyone's hero that morning. He just wanted a cheap cup of coffee and a few quiet minutes before picking up his daughter from daycare. The kindling cafe smelled of roasted beans and burnt toast, the kind of place where construction workers and students rubbed shoulders in line, and Ethan fit right in with his worn hoodie and calloused hands. He kept his eyes low, waiting for the barista to call his order. When a sharp voice cut through the hum of the conversation, "You're not even that pretty. Just smile and take the compliment." Ethan's jaw tightened. He lifted his gaze. 3 spots ahead, a man leaned far too close to a woman in a cream-colored coat. Her dark hair fell in waves over her shoulder, her coffee untouched on the counter. She didn't argue, didn't smile, just held herself still, with a jaw clenched tight. Ethan recognized that silence. It was the kind that carried more strength than words, but it was also the kind predators mistook for weakness. The man pressed closer, grinning like he thought he was charming. "Come on, don't be so uptight." Before Ethan could think better of it, he stepped forward. His voice came steady. "Low," she said, "no." The man turned sharply, his eyes narrowing. "Who asked you?" Ethan didn't flinch. "Nobody, but I've got a low tolerance for guys who can't take rejection." For a heartbeat, tension rippled through the cafe. The man puffed up, ready to escalate, until his eyes took in the details he hadn't noticed before. The steady set of Ethan's shoulders, the kind of hands that knew hard work, the tired but unshaken stare. Something in the man faltered. He muttered under his breath, grabbed his coffee, and stormed out, the door swinging shut behind him. The air in the cafe shifted. A couple of people looked relieved. Others pretended they hadn't been listening at all. Ethan stepped back, already wishing for the quiet he'd come here for. Then she turned to him. Her voice was calm, smooth. "He wasn't worth the breath," she said, "but thank you." Ethan shrugged, suddenly aware of how out of place he looked next to her. She carried herself with an elegance that didn't belong in a corner cafe with chipped tables and buzzing lights. He scratched the back of his neck. "No problem. You okay?" "Yes," she replied, her eyes meeting his, searching as if trying to place him. Then the faintest curve touched her lips, dimples he hadn't noticed before. "Do you always play the hero before 9 o'clock a.m.? A laugh slipped out of him. Quick, rough, only when I haven't had my coffee yet. For a moment they stood there, suspended in something neither of them had expected. He cleared his throat, gave a small wave, and started toward the door. "Well, I'd better get going. My daughter's waiting." Her brows lifted, surprised. "You have a daughter?" "Yeah, Mia, she's 4. Smartest person I know." He smiled at the thought, warmth softening the edges of his tired face. "She's the reason I don't actually throw punches." Lauren Bennett watched him leave. And though Ethan didn't notice, her gaze lingered, because there was something about the way he stepped in, without hesitation, without needing to prove anything that she knew she wouldn't forget. Lauren Bennett wasn't in the habit of lingering on strangers. Her life had been carefully curated. Every introduction weighed, every conversation measured. Men usually noticed her first, her family name, her position, the wealth that trailed her like perfume. They came with smiles too polished, intentions too obvious. Yet that morning at the Kindling Cafe, it was different. A man in a worn hoodie had stepped in without hesitation, shielded her with nothing more than a steady voice and the weight of his presence, then walked away as if it meant nothing. But it hadn't been anything. Not to her. Back in the quiet leather interior of her SUV, Lauren stared through the windshield longer than she should have. She told herself to let it go, but curiosity, sharp and unfamiliar, pushed against her composure. Finally, she tapped her phone, calling her assistant. "Melissa," she said, her voice even, though her fingers drummed lightly against the steering wheel. "Yes, Miss Bennett. I need you to look into someone. His name is Ethan Cole. He has a daughter, drives an older silver sedan. We met at Kindling Cafe this morning. Find out what you can, where he works, what he does, whether he's hesitated for a fraction of a second, surprising even herself, whether he's single." Melissa didn't hide the pause on the other end. "You want me to investigate a man from a coffee shop?" Lauren's gaze sharpened. I want to understand who he is. Don't ask questions. Just find it. She ended the call and leaned back, exhaling slowly. Outside, Portland moved at its usual rhythm. Pedestrians hurrying with scarves wrapped tight, cyclists weaving through traffic, the scent of rain clinging to the air. But Lauren's focus narrowed when she spotted him again. Across the street, Ethan emerged from the cafe carrying two small cups. He crossed toward the sedan she hadn't noticed before, a car long past its shine but cared for, its paint dulled by years. He opened the back door and that's when she saw her. The little girl Mia. Her curls bounced wildly as she chattered, her coat slightly too big, sleeves swallowing her small hands. Ethan crouched beside her, watching as he adjusted the seatbelt strap across her shoulder. He tugged it gently, testing, then leaned down to kiss her forehead before shutting the door with careful hands. Lauren's chest tightened unexpectedly. She had seen countless men in tailored suits, men who held doors and ordered champagne, but none who fastened a child's seatbelt with such reverence as though it were the most important task in the world. It wasn't grand, it wasn't performed for anyone watching, but it was real. Mia's laughter bubbled from inside the car, muffled by the closed windows. And Ethan smiled, the kind of smile that came from love, not performance. He slid into the driver's seat, glanced into the rearview mirror to check on her, then started the engine. The sedan coughed before settling into a low hum. Lauren felt something she hadn't allowed herself in years, a small, unguarded flutter in her chest. She pressed a hand against it as if to steady herself, but the warmth lingered. For the first time in so long, her heart responded not to status or ambition, but to something simpler, a father's quiet devotion to his child. As the sedan pulled away, disappearing into the stream of Portland traffic, Lauren whispered to no one in particular, "Who are you?" Ethan Cole. The question stayed with her long after the taillights faded, weaving into her thoughts like a thread she couldn't untangle. And though she told herself she only wanted to satisfy her curiosity, deep down she knew the truth. Something had shifted, and she wasn't about to let it slip away. The next morning, Ethan Cole was on the job site early, steel-toe boots kicking up dust as he carried lumber toward the half-frame house, rising against Portland's gray sky. Work was simple, straightforward. It kept his hands busy, his mind steady, and his little girl's world secure. He liked it that way. But when the sleek black SUV slowed to a stop at the edge of the site, every motion around him seemed to pause. Lauren Bennett stepped out. She didn't belong to the noise of hammers and the grit of sawdust. Yet somehow she carried herself as if the ground shifted to make room for her. Conversation stilled. A few of Ethan's coworkers whistled low, elbowing each other. Ethan gripped the ladder tighter, his pulse jumping in a way he hadn't felt in years. She walked straight toward him, her coat brushing against the wind, her heels clicking against broken pavement, without hesitation. When her eyes met his, they softened. "Hey," she said simply, as though greeting him here was the most natural thing in the world. Ethan blinked. Hi." His voice felt rougher than usual, caught somewhere between disbelief and caution. Lauren tilted her head, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Can I buy you lunch for a second?" He thought he'd misheard. He glanced around, catching the stares of his coworkers, the smirks they weren't even trying to hide. "You're serious, Very." She folded her arms, waiting for him to say no, but hoping he wouldn't, unless you'd prefer another chaotic coffee shop. Ethan let out a half laugh, shaking his head. "I mean, I'd offer to drive, but my car doesn't exactly match your ride," Lauren's reply came quickly, steadily. "I'm not here for the car. I'm here for you." The words landed heavier than she realized. For a long moment, Ethan just looked at her, searching for the catch, the angle. People like her didn't show up on construction sites for men like him. Yet there she stood, calm and certain, asking nothing more than a meal in his company. He pulled off his gloves slowly, dust falling to the ground. "All right, Em," he said finally, nodding. "Let me clean up first." Lauren's smile deepened, but it wasn't triumphant. It was relieved. "I'll wait." When Ethan disappeared toward the trailers to change into a clean shirt, the site buzzed back to life, though the whispers followed him. He ignored them. He was used to being overlooked, underestimated. But this was different. Minutes later, he walked back toward her, jeans still faded, hair still damp from a quick rinse at the sink. But it was the best he could do. He half expected her to look disappointed, to reconsider instead. She looked at him as though he belonged, as though the dust on his boots didn't matter at all. "Ready?" she asked. Ethan nodded, pushing aside the unease curling in his chest. He wasn't sure what this was or why she'd sought him out. But as he followed her to the waiting car, one thing was clear. Lauren Bennett wasn't chasing appearances or convenience. She wanted to see him, really see him. And against his better judgment, Ethan found himself wanting to let her. The restaurant smelled of roasted garlic and simmering tomatoes. A place where every table gleamed under soft candlelight and the menus carried no prices. Ethan Cole sat across from Lauren Bennett, the linen napkin stiff across his lap, his cleanest jeans feeling suddenly out of place against velvet-backed chairs. He had spent his life in diners and sandwich shops, the kind where coffee was refilled without asking. Here, waiters glided like shadows, greeting Lauren by name as though she owned the place. Ethan shifted slightly, lowering his voice. "I'm guessing this isn't your usual lunch crowd," he said, half teasing, half cautious. Lauren smiled, lifting her glass. "No, but I wanted you to know I wasn't showing up for fun yesterday. I came because I couldn't stop thinking about you." The words startled him more than the chandelier above their heads or the silverware heavy enough to anchor a boat. He leaned back, studying her. Since the cafe, she repeated, her tone calm but unshakable. "Ethan, I don't usually feel like this. Men come at me with practice lines, with agendas I can read before they speak. Yesterday, you didn't hesitate. You didn't posture. You protected me and walked away like it meant nothing. But it meant something to me, and for a moment he didn't know what to say." Her eyes, sharp and sure, softened in a way that felt private, as if she was letting him glimpse a side no one else got to see. He rubbed the back of his neck, a nervous tell he thought he had shaken years ago. "You don't seem like the kind of woman who gets told no very often," he said carefully. "I don't," she admitted, her dimples showing with a small, almost self-aware smile. "And you're not the kind of man I ever thought I'd chase. Steel-toe boots, calloused hands, tired eyes. But I'm not here for what you wear. I'm here because being around you feels safe, honest, real, and I haven't felt that in years." The waiter arrived, setting down plates that looked more like works of art than meals. Ethan barely noticed. He kept watching her, weighing the weight of her words. He had spent so long living in survival mode, focused on Mia, on keeping the lights on staying afloat, that he'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen for more than responsibility. "You know this doesn't make sense." "Right," he said finally, his voice quiet. "You live in a world I don't even touch. And me," he gestured at himself at the faded denim and worn boots beneath the table. Lauren leaned forward, her gaze never leaving his. "Maybe it doesn't make sense, but I'm not here for sense. I'm here for the truth. And when you looked at me yesterday, it was the first time in a long time someone saw me. Not my name, not my family, not my money, just me." Ethan let the silence stretch, his chest tightening in a way he hadn't expected. For the first time, he allowed himself to look at her without suspicion, without assuming she was playing some game. She was elegant, yes, but also present, vulnerable in a way that no polished suit or expensive ring could disguise. And in that moment, something inside him shifted. He wasn't ready to name it. Not yet, but he couldn't deny it. He began to see Lauren Bennett not as someone far above his reach, but as a woman sitting across from him, asking for nothing but honesty, and maybe, just maybe, offering him the same. The gallery shimmered with low light and whispered wealth, every wall lined with canvases that looked more like accidents than masterpieces. A string quartet played softly near the corner, their bows gliding in perfect unison, while waiters drifted by, balancing trays of champagne flutes that sparkled like liquid gold. Ethan Cole tugged at the collar of the blazer Lauren had sent to his apartment that morning. It wasn't his, of course. Nothing about this room felt like it belonged to him. Yet when he caught Lauren's glance, the faint curve of reassurance at the corner of her lips, he stood a little straighter. "I still can't believe you talked me into this," he muttered, lowering his voice as another couple swept past in designer gowns and polished shoes. Lauren tilted her head, her earrings catching the light. "You said you'd never been to an art show. I thought I'd help you cross it off the list." Ethan looked at the canvas nearest him, a swirl of colors that seemed more like spilled paint than intentional creation. I don't even know what I'm looking at. You're not supposed to, she said, her voice warm. You're supposed to feel it. He let out a low chuckle. I feel like someone's laughing at me from behind the curtain. Lauren's laughter followed, softer, meant just for him. She stepped a little closer, lowering her voice. You don't have to impress anyone here. Ethan, least of all me. Before he could answer, a man in a navy suit approached, his smile practiced, his glass filled with something amber. Lauren, he greeted, a note of surprise in his tone. Didn't expect to see you back from Geneva so soon. I flew back this morning, Lauren replied smoothly. Every inch, the woman who belonged here. Henry invited me personally. The man's gaze shifted to Ethan, a flicker of curiosity breaking through his polished expression. And your guest, Ethan, extended a hand instinctively. Ethan Cole. The man's eyes lingered, waiting. And you collect. Ethan blinked. Tools. A beat of silence stretched long enough for Ethan's chest to tighten until Lauren spoke. Her tone calm, confident. Ethan restores historic buildings. He works with his hands, preserving what most people overlook. Her words hung there, graceful and deliberate, transforming what could have been embarrassment into quiet dignity. The man's nod came slowly, as though filing away information he hadn't expected. I see. Well, enjoy the show. When he drifted off, Ethan exhaled, his shoulders easing. Did he look at me like I was chewing with my mouth open? Or am I imagining that Lauren's gaze stayed steady? He's irrelevant. You do realize, Ethan said quietly, I'm not the kind of guy people expect to see you with. I didn't ask for their expectations, she replied, her voice certain. He studied her then. Really studied her. Then what did you ask for? Lauren looked around the crowded gallery, then back at him. Her eyes unreadable but honest. Someone who doesn't lie to me. Someone who doesn't want anything from me. The weight of her words settled deep in his chest. He didn't have a polished answer, so he let the silence stretch, the music filling the space between them. Late at her as they stepped out into the cool Portland night, Ethan glanced at her once more, and for the first time he believed her. She hadn't brought him here to fit in. She'd brought him here because she trusted that even in his discomfort, he was exactly who he said he was. And maybe that was enough. The ticket had arrived tucked into Ethan's mailbox, slipped between overdue bills and junk flyers. A single admission to the Hearthlight Haven Children's Museum with a neat handwritten note beneath it for Mia. Saturday at noon, I'll bring the snacks. Ethan held it for a long time, the paper softening at the edges beneath his thumb. He didn't keep it in his wallet, afraid it would get lost there among receipts and folded pay-ups. He kept it in his jacket pocket instead, close enough that he could feel its weight when he reached for his keys. By Saturday morning, Mia was already bouncing in the back seat, her little backpack strapped across her shoulders, curls springing in every direction. Is she really coming? She asked, her eyes wide with the certainty of children. Ethan glanced at her through the mirror, swallowing the knot in his throat. She said she would. You like her, Mia said matter-of-factly, the way only a 4-year-old could. Ethan didn't answer, choosing instead to focus on the road. Some truths felt too fragile to say out loud. Lauren was waiting near the entrance, her coat tucked open, sunglasses hooked into the pocket. She held a brown paper bag that smelled faintly of chocolate and butter. The moment she saw Mia, she crouched down to eye level, offering the boy like it was treasure. Hi, Mia. I brought chocolate croissants. The lady at the bakery swore they fix everything, especially boring museum days. Mia giggled, taking the bag. They're not boring. They have a spaceship room. Lauren's smile widened. Spaceships? Well, that changes everything. She looked up at Ethan then, a glimmer of mischief in her eyes, and he felt something in his chest ease without permission. The three of them wandered the exhibits together, following Mia as she dashed from neon stars to foam planets, her tiny voice echoing explanations she only half understood. Lauren listened to every word as if it were gospel, nodding solemnly when Mia explained gravity with the authority of a scientist. Ethan hung back at times, watching the two of them. The sight of Lauren kneeling to help Mia with an interactive display, laughing when the simulator tilted too far, was something he hadn't realized he'd wanted to see until it was right there. At one point, Lauren caught him, watching. Her smile faltered just enough to reveal something deeper, something closer to longing. Ethan leaned toward her, keeping his voice low. You all right? She nodded, though her gaze lingered on Mia. I didn't think I'd ever get to do something like this. Why not? My life's always been curated. Events, meetings, appearances. Nothing ever feels real. She paused, her eyes softening. This does. Before Ethan could answer, Mia came barreling back, arms flung wide as she wrapped herself around Lauren's waist. I like you, she announced with all the certainty in the world. Lauren blinked, caught off guard. Why is that? Because you don't talk to me like I'm a baby and you smell like flowers. The laugh that broke from Lauren then was unguarded, unpolished, and entirely real. Ethan felt it settle somewhere deep, a sound he wanted to hear again. That night after Mia was asleep, he sat at the kitchen table, staring at an overdue utility bill shoved beneath a half-empty cereal box, the weight of it pressed against his chest, heavier than the tools he carried every day. He rubbed his face with both hands, wondering how much longer he could keep patching holes faster than they opened. A knock startled him again, softer this time. He opened the door to find Lauren standing there, her cheeks pink from the cold, a paper bag in one hand and a bottle of wine in the other. I didn't know if tonight was good, she said, almost hesitant, but I couldn't stop thinking about you. He stepped aside silently, letting her in. She set the bag on the counter and pulled out 2 containers. Chicken pot pie from that place I told you about. Ethan sat across from her, appetite gone, pushing the crust around with his fork. The silence stretched until she spoke, her voice steady. Something happened. He didn't want to answer, but the words came anyway. Social services dropped by. Somebody flagged my file, probably a teacher, maybe a neighbor. Happens when you don't have money and look tired. Lauren's gaze never wavered. What do you need? He set the fork down, shaking his head. Nothing. I'm not taking a damn cent from you. I wasn't offering money, she said softly. I was offering help, connections, legal advice, whatever makes it easier to breathe. His laugh was low, bitter. You don't get it. If I let someone like you fix this, I lose. She leaned forward, her voice unshaken. Then don't let me fix it. Let me be part of the solution with you, not instead of you. The words hung between them, heavier than anything else that night. He wanted to tell her no, to push her back into the world she belonged to. But when she whispered, Ethan, please let me stand with you, something in him cracked. He didn't answer. Not yet, but for the first time he had let himself wonder what it might feel like facing the storm with someone at his side. The envelope arrived at sunrise, slipped under Ethan's door, with a wax seal pressed into the flap. Heavy paper, delicate script, his name spelled in gold. Guest of honor, Bennett Foundation Estate. He turned it over in his hands, half expecting it to vanish if he blinked. It wasn't a fundraiser or a gala open to the city. This was private. Family, board members, those of consequence. People like him didn't make those lists. Yet here it was. By the time the evening came, Ethan stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the lapel of the black suit Lauren had sent earlier that week. It felt too smooth against his shoulders, too fine for hands that still bore the grit of construction. Mia had begged to braid his hair, giggling when she couldn't quite twist the strands. You look like you're going to an interview, she teased, legs swinging as she sat on the couch. He kissed her curls and promised he'd be home before bedtime. The Bennett Foundation estate glowed like something out of a history book. Marble steps and sweeping arches bathed in golden light. Valet whisked cars away with practiced ease, laughter floating from the open doors. Ethan parked at the edge, walking the rest of the way in, each step heavier than the last. Inside, the atmosphere hummed with quiet wealth. Waiters floated past with glasses of wine. Music threaded the air like silk. Lauren spotted him almost instantly, her navy gown simple but striking, her expression softening the moment their eyes met. She crossed the room, slipping her hand into his. You came, she said. I wasn't sure you'd come, she said. I almost didn't, he admitted. What changed your mind? You didn't write a note. He held her gaze. That's how I knew it was real. Her smile flickered with something tender. She didn't answer, just led him through the crowd, stopping at the solarium where her mother sat with a glass of wine. Elegant, composed, eyes sharp as cut crystal. So, Mrs. Bennet said, her tone carrying equal parts curiosity and challenge. You're the man who's managed to ruin my daughter's taste in men. Lauren's spine straightened. Mother, relax, darling, she said smoothly. I didn't say I disapproved. I said I was surprised. You always did have a weakness for sincerity. Ethan met her eyes. Steady. I won't pretend I belong here. Good, she replied, lips curving. Then I might actually believe you're worth listening to. I've seen enough men in suits with no soul behind their eyes. Calluses and clarity are rarer. Don't waste them. It was the closest thing to approval he expected, and somehow it was more than he needed. Lauren exhaled, a small laugh escaping her. Her mother sipped her wine, unconcerned, as though she'd already read her daughter's heart and found the truth she'd been waiting for. Later, as the crowd thinned and the estate softened under the night air, Lauren tugged Ethan out onto the terrace. The city glowed in the distance, stars muted but still present. She leaned against the stone railing, her voice low. I know this isn't your world. I didn't bring you here to fit in. He studied her face, the shadows in the light. Then why bring me? She turned fully, her eyes unguarded. Because I wanted them to see what I see. A man who doesn't perform, who doesn't chase, who protects what's his without making it about pride. You don't need me, Ethan. That's why I chose you. The words cut through every wall he'd built, every doubt he'd carried. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Because when she stepped closer and kissed him, slow, certain, not claiming him, but meeting him, he kissed her back for the first time since that morning in the cafe. Ethan let himself believe this wasn't borrowed. It was beginning. The wedding came quietly, without headlines or photographers, without the polished speeches that usually filled Lauren Bennett's world. In a small chapel on the outskirts of Portland, surrounded only by friends who mattered, Ethan Cole stood in a suit that finally felt like his own. Mia held a bouquet of wildflowers, too restless to stand still, her curl bouncing as she grinned at everyone in sight. Lauren wore ivory, not lace or silk, just a dress that moved with the wind. When the vows came, there were no scripts written by planners, no rehearsed phrases. Ethan simply took her hand and said, I already did. And when they kissed, Mia clapped the loudest, her little voice echoing in the wooden beams above. They didn't move into a mansion. Did they choose a skyline view? Instead, Lauren picked a house with a wide porch and weathered floorboards, a place where silence was the kind that healed instead of haunted. Ethan said yes the moment he saw the old tree in the yard, big enough for Mia to hang a swing on their first evening there. They sat barefoot on the porch steps, watching the sun bleed into the horizon, knowing this was the kind of life they had chosen. Not inherited. The garden came next. In just 3 days, Ethan built wooden beds with his own hands, hammering late into the night, while Mia handed him nails with exaggerated importance. A small sign staked into the dirt read, Mia's Jungle, where tomato sprouts and strawberries began to push through the soil. Beside it, a quieter corner was marked Mom's Sanctuary, where lavender and mint rooted themselves in peace. When Lauren first saw it, she pressed a hand to her chest, blinking back the tears that came before she could stop them. Ethan only smiled, brushing dust from his palms. Figured the baby deserved fresh fruit, he said. She threaded her fingers through his, answering softly, and I deserve you. By spring, the nursery was finished. One wall was painted a pale sage, the other still holding a crooked patch where Mia had insisted on helping with her own brush. They left it that way. Imperfect, but perfect for them. The baby came on a Thursday, a boy. They named him Caleb. Lauren held him first, but Ethan held him longer, whispering words she didn't catch, but didn't need to. Some promises belonged only between father and son. Mia declared herself big sister boss, taking the role with chubby, checked pride. She read Caleb picture books with grand, dramatic voices and insisted on showing him every single plant in the garden. Ethan built a sandbox beside the strawberry bed, and Lauren, working part-time from the sunroom he had converted into her office, filled the house with her steady voice during conference calls. Life no longer felt borrowed. It was built brick by brick, heartbeat by heartbeat. One evening under strings of garden lights, they sat together, Ethan with his arm draped around Lauren, Mia giggling barefoot in the grass, Caleb sleeping against her chest. The air was filled with lavender and wood smoke, the kind of scent that settled deep into memory. Lauren tilted her face toward him. "I never thought I'd end up here," she murmured. "With me?" he asked, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "With us?" she corrected, her smile soft but certain. Ethan kissed the top of her head, holding her closer. "Me neither." And for the first time in both their lives, they weren't surviving. They were choosing every day, every breath, every moment together. What if I asked you to pause and reflect on the heart of Ethan and Lauren's story here? What stands out about how a simple act of kindness, like defending a stranger in a coffee shop, spirals into profound connections, blending worlds of grit and glamour into a shared family tapestry? Might this reveal a deeper insight into vulnerability and courage, where stepping up without expectation can bridge divides we never imagined crossing, turning isolation into belonging? Consider in your own life, have you ever witnessed or experienced a moment where one unassuming choice, perhaps offering help to someone overlooked, sparked unexpected change, reminding us that true value lies not in status or wealth, but in the quiet authenticity of human connection? What emotions stir within you when picturing Maya's innocent joy, weaving Ethan and Lauren together? Or the way social services shadow tests their bond, highlighting resilience amid uncertainty? Could this teach us that life's richest lessons emerge from embracing the unknown, choosing love over logic, and building futures from fleeting encounters, encouraging us to seek out those coffee shop moments where fate whispers possibilities? Now imagine distilling these reflections into a heartfelt 200, 300-word paragraph for an audience. How would you phrase the emotional core to evoke empathy, weaving in the lesson of kindness as a catalyst for transformation? Let's explore together. Perhaps start by jotting down key scenes that moved you, then layer in a call to action like, share your own story of unexpected kindness in the comments below, and subscribe for more tales that remind us of love's quiet power. What words might make it resonate deeply, inviting readers to ponder their own journeys? Share your draft, and we'll refine it step by step to uncover that profound emotional truth.